And Sonia just hit the record button. So welcome, everybody. This is a workshop that's part of the Chesapeake Harvest Produce Safety from Soil to Sale project. And we're partnering here with Trish Tripp from Artisan Food Solutions, and we are funded by a Project Safety Outreach Program grant from USDA and USDA, National Institute of Food and Agriculture, NIFA. And Chesapeake Harvest is a team of experienced and educators in training, and we bring produce safety training to small, diverse, urban, rural, and hard-to-reach farming communities all over the Mid-Atlantic region. And we do this by using a community-based educator approach. So we have...
Hey, Lindsay.
Yeah. Yes, Trish? Uh-oh. Did we lose Trish? No, we lost me.
It looks like she's frozen.
I think can you hear me?
I can hear you fine. Mm-hmm.
Trish is frozen?
Yeah, I'm going to send her a message.
I might have to, well, okay, so I keep doing my little spiel here?
Yeah, keep going.
Okay. So we have this, we use a community-based educator approach rather than we do partner with educators from University Extension and other organizations, but our community educators are folks that are generally based in the communities where the farmers are. So we have farmers who are training as educators and other agricultural service providers or food nutrition providers such as Crystal, who work in their own communities where they can have the greatest impact implementing produce safety practices and helping farmers understand food safety practices. So you're learning from people who are actually grappling with this stuff themselves and finding value in it. And then our produce safety educator team is located in the Mid-Atlantic region. And in addition to this kind of a variety of workshops and webinars like this, we also do one-on-one coaching with farmers. And that includes coming to your farm to do an on-farm risk assessment, help if what you need is just some standard operating procedures, we can help you write those. If you need help understanding the Food Safety Modernization Act, produce safety rule, and GAP certification, we can help you figure out that where you fit into that landscape, excuse me. And then we can also help you write a food safety plan if that is something you think you need, particularly if you want to get GAP certified to sell to certain buyers. So I'm going to stop there. Aaliyah, who is I kind of think of us as co-managers at this point, Aaliyah, of this project, is going to talk about our produce safety educator trainee opportunity. Sonia, since we've lost Trish, can you share, do you have the PowerPoint?
I do.
Somewhere?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And can you, do you have her phone number? You can message it.
I'll try and interface with Trish. And I guess I didn't, so just in terms of introductions, I'm Lindsay Gilmore. I'm a produce safety educator. I work all over the country, but I have been involved in this effort in the Mid-Atlantic for the last 6 years. And as I said, Aaliyah Fraser is the project manager for this project. And then we've got Kimberly, Ruth, and Crystal also online with us today, who are produce safety educators in training. Aaliyah, Sonia, do you just want to give a quick intro to yourself and what you can help people with today? And then Aaliyah, if you want to take the next.
Mm-hmm. Sure. I'm actually trying to call Trish right now, but I'm Sonia. I'm tech support. We're doing tech support live for you right now. Just let me know if you have any issues. Feel free to message me.
Awesome. Thank you. My name's Aaliyah Frazier. It's good to see some familiar names and faces on here. I, as Lindsay said, I'm project manager for this project. So I'm the person who will do any scheduling to come to your farm or kind of do some intake interviews if you have questions and don't know where to start with our services. But I wanted to share, and you know, we got this funding over the past 4 years, basically 4 or 5, and we just recently got extended for a couple more years. So on top of our trainees that we already have now and going deeper with them and providing more professional development, we also get the chance to bring on, a cohort of like around 3 or 4 new people. So this is for you if you're in the Mid-Atlantic, because most of the farms is within the Mid-Atlantic region. And yeah, if you're interested in bringing food safely to consumers from soil to sale, you want to get to know food safety requirements. If you have a community of farmers who you already share knowledge and resources with, that's really important because we're community-based educators, and we want to be able to reach our communities. And a few things to know about the program is that you get paid for this training, which is huge because a lot of people, and Lindsay included, had to go get this training and pay for it, and now is able to pay people to get this training. You will also get to go to a few conferences and trainings like the PSA grower training for free. You'll get a chance to actually do hands-on risk assessments with farmers so that in the future you might be able to do that on your own as a private consultant or contractor. And you'll also get access to just a lot of templates and resources and professional development. So if anyone's interested in that as a something to do, because it takes time. A lot of our educators and trainees, it takes time, which is why we pay for it. But if you have the time, whether you're farming or not, we'd love to hear from you. And you can email me at info@chesapeakeharvest.com. And Lindsay already gave you the background that if you're a farmer and you're not interested in training, we can still come to your farm and help you with risk assessment, food safety plan coaching, and just, meet you where you are. So that's the email, and I'll put it in the chat box too.
And we have funding to do this through 2024. So there's a real opportunity for professional development and career development if this is something you're interested in, or you can just do it because you want to be helping your own community. All right, Trish is back. I'm going to stop sharing.
I think I am.
You think you are? Some part of you is back?
Well, I'm just need to get to the point where I can share my screen. Hi, everyone.
You want to introduce yourself, Trish, too?
Yes, I will. Can you all disable the screen sharing, please? So I am Trish Tripp, and I have been working for many, many years trying to help small farmers improve the shelf life and the quality of their vegetables so that they could scale up and enter into more wholesale outlets. And so I also am a food safety auditor and do food safety consultant, have worked with Lindsay and some of the other members of the team for many years now. And so I'm looking forward to the webinar tonight or this evening, so we can really focus on the shelf life challenges, as well as discuss potential opportunities to scale up into wholesale markets. And then at some point, I'd like to hear what your all's goals are for your farm. Actually, if you could go ahead and start putting in the chat what your goals are for your farm, that would be fantastic. If you plan on scaling up into wholesale markets anytime soon, or you're just simply looking for ways to improve your shelf life and proper handling of the vegetables.
You're a co-host now. You should be able to share screen.
Okay.
And I'm going to go on mute.
All right. Does that look good, Lindsay?
Looks great.
Thank you. All right. So we're going to start just with a basic introduction. And as I said, I've been working with produce companies for over 10, probably 12, 13 years now. Some here in the Carolinas. One is Merchant Distributors, the other U.S. Foods, and then Foster Cabinets, which is a local company in Greensboro, North Carolina. We've been working for years with with a lot of the farmers in North Carolina, and have recently expanded some of these programs over the past couple of years to South Carolina. So I'm not sure if you all have these same distributors, but they may just be local to our region and not the Northeast, and I'm not sure. But even after all these years, we're still seeing consumers demanding more local product. We're seeing a bit of a lower demand for organic product here in the Carolinas, and more of a demand for local. And I understand from Lindsay, it's pretty consistent in the Northeast as well. So we're all trying to support the small farmers, still trying to work out many food system challenges along the way. And so just to provide you with a little bit of history, I owned restaurants for 16 years, and we saw food safety being implemented. We saw potential challenges for the small farms that we sourced our produce from for restaurants. And I mean, this is back in the early 2000s, around 1999, 2000. And so I decided that I was going to go back to graduate school. Couldn't really find the degree that I wanted, but knew that I wanted to help small farmers. And my idea was, as I was working through school, that I would work for some of these larger distributors and the smaller local wholesalers, because, just simply thinking of the infrastructure, wanted to learn how the warehousing worked, wanted to learn, what their challenges are on a large scale that we then can, learn from and transition best practices to the local food supply chain. I knew they had trucks, I knew they had warehouse space, and, basically what I thought at the time, everything that I was missing and needed to help the small farmers move more product. So I think this slide is a little bit hard to see, and I apologize. Something happened to the colors here, but as as I worked for these folks, I saw that we don't only have challenges within the fresh produce industry at the small scale level, but wholesalers, large companies have the same challenges. And as we know, produce has a very short shelf life. So it has to get from one point to the other and still have a reasonable shelf life for the consumer. And, if we look at logistics, we knew that was one of the big challenges for the small growers. We couldn't get 2 cases of product. It didn't make sense to drive 2 cases of product 2 hours to one of these warehouses for the wholesalers to sell. We quickly learned from a logistical standpoint that everything operated in full pallets, extra tall full pallets, and we just couldn't get to, we couldn't aggregate enough product for it to make sense. This was back, I forget, maybe 2008. And we did receive some grants within the Carolinas to start opening food hubs. North Carolina may even today still be one of the states that houses the most number of food hubs within the United States on a state level, at a state level basis. So, and the majority of them are still trying to figure out how to survive. So we're still experiencing some of the same logistical challenges. From a shelf life standpoint, wholesalers need a longer shelf life. they have to guarantee their customer a shelf life that's reasonable, so the product cannot go out of date as soon as it gets to the customer. And then grading, sorting, and packaging. You know, we were receiving local product into these warehouses in baskets, in cardboard boxes, in recyclable plastic containers. So we didn't see a lot of consistency among the small farms, and so that became a challenge. And then from a warehouse space, this was very interesting to me because I personally never thought of it. And I'm going to back up to this picture here. This warehouse space, what they call floor space, is very valuable. So you can see that they've gone up 3 layers in height in this particular warehouse. And so you can imagine, you see here a pallet of onions, you can imagine us asking them to stick 3 bushel baskets of green beans in one of these slots. So, you know, what I once thought was possible, just, you know, obviously was not. But the number one thing that I identified was communication. And if you can imagine that for each one of these small growers, that even the distributors that were very passionate about helping the small farmers and really trying hard to help, even in cases that they were losing money or losing some of their profit within their operation, they would have to have a conversation and communicate with each one of these farmers individually. So you can imagine that that is a time-consuming process. So at this point, we went to all these existing food hubs and we said, hey, look, why don't you all just take on the role of marketing and aggregating the product, and then we can move the product from the food hubs to these large warehouses or wholesale buyers. And so we attempted that. It did work in some aspects. It was improved, let's put it that way. The quality of the product, pack sizes of the product, we still have big challenges there. So that is when, you know, we partnered with some of the universities, including NC State, and decided that we needed to put curriculum together. And we held workshops throughout the state, teaching people which box to put which product in, what size to harvest it in, how to store it. And, you know, just really developing some of these post-harvest handling techniques. And so here we are today, sharing this with Lindsay's group. Does anyone know what this item is here in the picture? If you all could put it in the chat. And Lindsay, I cannot see the chat box. Let's see. Here we go.
I'll tell you, oh my goodness. Lauren went right to it. Ruth, I love it. Garden eggs. It's great.
Garden eggs, yeah.
Kermit eggplant.
So I've not heard that term, but that doesn't mean that's not right. You know, we do see that this is a Japanese eggplant, and so it's round. A lot of the 5-star restaurants use them, you know, slice them like a tomato. But this is one product that, as we were doing crop planning with some of the farmers, that we said, hey, why don't you grow this? It's unique. But what we found, and what, you know, the point that I want to make here first, is that you never know what variety and, you know, what vegetables to plant. You're taking a gamble. If you just see something in the seed catalog that looks really cool and you try to market it. Now, if you're a farmer's market, if you have a table at the farmer's market and are selling there, it's a great way to introduce a new product or marketing it directly to chefs. But I wouldn't recommend planting 4 or 5 acres of a new product. So the first season of planting it, you want to really educate folks on their different uses, ask a chef to help you incorporate it into restaurants. and go through that process before you plant a lot of it. But here, you'll see a lot of defects in these, and that, you know, that's obviously insects and disease pressure. But when you are looking at quality control of a product, and especially a new product, a lot of folks really aren't sure what they're looking at. So I wanted to just go over some of the main properties of a vegetable, when fruit or vegetable, when we are talking about the quality of the fruit and vegetable. The first is the appearance. So you want it, you know, they're looking at the color, like tomatoes, for example, can be harvested at different colors, and that is very, very buyer specific. The size, the shape, free from these defects. Of course, some, especially in organic production, are allowed. Firmness, and then the flavor. So to me, flavor is like number one. But this Turkish orange eggplant here, you know, it's one of the challenges was that we really didn't know what size it was supposed to be, what it was supposed to look like, you know, whether or not it could grow more consistent in size. You can see there's a lot of different sizing variety in this photo. But it's, you know, new products are not necessarily all evaluated by the USDA with grading qualities included or created for the products. So here, you know, just thinking about how all this impacts what, if you're a farmer, what you grow, and then for the buyers, obviously, if you're going to grow it, you need a buyer for it. So, you know, we look at the shelf life and grading, sorting, and packing. The more flexibility on how much product they will buy from the farms is determined by the shelf life and the quality of the product, as well as that industry specific pack size, so that they can make that pallet. The ability to pack the product out into conventional product if the local product does not sell. This is really important to a wholesaler. And what that means to pack the product out is if they have a case of, let's say, seedless cucumbers, and you grew them in one of the greenhouses up north, and you know, you have a wholesale buyer that you're working with, they stock one from, say, California, and they may take more of a risk to buy your greenhouse cucumber if the size is consistent with the ones that they're buying from California, the size of the cucumber itself, plus the pack size. Because what they do is they use the first in, first out concept, but a lot of these buyers, you know, are selling a high volume of product to their customer. And so if it's a product that already stock, then they can very simply just, if the local product does not sell, do what they call packing it out into the rest of that product that they have in stock that was from California. This minimizes waste. And then, of course, customer satisfaction. They want that shelf life and that quality to carry through to the end user of the product. So why overall is post-harvest handling so important? If you take time to invest in the education process, which you're here tonight on the webinar, so you're already doing that, you can get a more premium price for your product. Of course, quality and food safety are very closely related, because a damaged product, one that's not handled properly, can increase the infiltration of any bacteria or pathogen into that product. So even a scuffed squash or a tomato that was harvested too ripe and had no shelf life and was just basically mush or very soft when it arrived to the end user. So food safety and quality are very directly related. If a wholesaler believes in your product, knows that you understand what they're looking for in a product, they're all looking to reduce losses and also to minimize waste as part of their sustainability programs. So, that's very important. The first time they work with a new farmer and they don't get quality product, if they don't have the ongoing relationship, things happen, sometimes, but that first impression is really important. And then, of course, proper post-harvest handling does increase the shelf life of the product, and it provides marketing opportunities for you and your farm. Through one of the projects that I worked with, the North Carolina Growing Together project, the website is ncgrowingtogether.org. This was one of the resources that was developed during this project. And so it is available on this website. And this, I mentioned MDI. MDI is actually the warehouse for Lowe's Foods, a local grocery store we have here, not Lowe's Hardware, but Lowe's Foods. And so they market direct to grocery stores. So they're looking at retail pack sizes. And then Foster Cabinets, who is like 98% serving institutional buyers. So, the difference between wholesale and retail product specifications, is very different. You see a lot of individually packed products in a grocery store. You wouldn't waste that packaging to sell into a college or university kitchen. So let me just move to the next one.
Trish, just so everybody knows, we're going to be sharing a couple of folders of resources with everybody, and this manual is one of the PDFs in that folder.
Thank you, Lindsay. So, so here is just a page on asparagus that is inside the manual, and you will see that it provides a photo of the vegetable, some general characteristics of what we're looking for as a wholesale buyer of the vegetable, and then even to include harvest guidance. When is the best time to harvest this? What size should the vegetable be when I harvest it? How do I pre-cool this? Do I wash this product? Should it or should it not come into contact with water? Should I submerge it or just spray it? The size and appearance, and then the pack sizes. And you'll see here the wholesale pack size and retail pack size in this case is very similar. Is exactly the same actually. But there are very few products that this is the case. So for wholesale, it's 24 1-pound banded bunches of asparagus. So you recall seeing those sitting upright within the grocery store aisles. So it's sold the same wholesale and retail. And then we provided the optimal storage temperature. So this is optimal for asparagus storage from 32 degrees Fahrenheit to 35 degrees Fahrenheit, and the vegetable to maintain the optimal shelf life, or the shelf life that we need for it to make it all the way to the end user. The humidity within that storage, that refrigeration needs to be between 95 and 99%. So the little bit of information, and it doesn't have a whole lot of products, but it has, some of the more popular products that are consumed throughout the United States and grown in higher volumes. But this information on this page is a summary of about probably 10 different resources of 500 pages or more. So take a look at it in the resources that Lindsay was referring to. I think you'll find it very useful. And you could create the same type of resource for any employees that maybe work on the farm for the actual products that you grow in higher volumes. So the top causes of reduced shelf life, obviously temperature, the temperature that it's stored at, physical damage causes degradation of fresh fruits and vegetables, pathogens cause decay, and this could be, bacteria from someone's hands, relative humidity, and then cross-contamination of product. So those are the top causes of reduced shelf life. So this is what we're trying to maintain. So when we try to increase shelf life, obviously it starts with proper handling of the produce. Temperature management, let's just talk about that really quick. You don't want to necessarily harvest your product in the hot afternoon. The best time to harvest to maintain this shelf life is before the field heat actually gets into that vegetable. So we recommend that you harvest early in the morning. Once the product is harvested, you want to keep the produce out of the direct sunlight or extreme temperatures. Again, you're trying to keep the pulp or the center of the fruit and vegetable cool at all times. Provide shade while transporting the product, but be very cautious of providing shade while you're transporting the product, that you're not actually trapping the heat into that product. And then, of course, whenever possible, you want to maintain a 100% cold supply chain. This is probably the biggest marketing tool that and focusing on minimizing food loss. And this food loss is very different than food waste, but food loss would be product that is left out in the field, for example, in surplus from a farm, or product that never made it within the food supply chain, versus food waste, maybe product that we buy at the grocery store, all this beautiful fresh produce, stick it in the refrigerator and decide to go to dinner and it spoils. So that's the difference in food loss and waste. But all of these larger suppliers, they are able to maintain that 100% cold supply chain. And so they utilize this as a marketing tool. So, thinking about being a small farm, harvesting the product, even if we pre-cool our vehicles with the air conditioner, put the product in the back of our car and drive it 10 minutes down the road, we already have quicker degradation of the product than one of these large companies that are able to maintain that 100% cold supply chain. So we tried to get really, really fancy, or not, in coming up with some quicker pre-cooling methods. There are some methods that you can use on the farm that do not involve, a huge investment into walk-in coolers that can help you to increase your shelf life of your product. One is utilizing hydrocooling, which is the picture on the left, where we actually are not putting ice into the water, but a frozen bottle of water so that the ice is not in direct contact with the produce, causing freeze damage. So that is one example. Room cooling, which if you all do make it to Upper Marlboro, we will have a room cooling demonstration. And then there is forced air cooling. There's top icing. I don't know if any of you grow collards, broccoli. Trying to think of some other products that they use the crushed ice on top of. Some products can tolerate being directly top iced, and some products cannot. But I'm sure those of you who do farm and buy boxes and have priced some of the wax boxes, when we talk about the top icing or liquid method or even vacuum cooling, that's typically done with the product inside the box, and the wax box can tolerate that cool water being poured over top of it, and it still holds up during transport. So the boxes are expensive, but packs, the type of box that's being used for the particular product, it's really important to make sure that that product is, that box rather, is made for that product, is adequate for that product and protecting it and its quality. From a sanitation standpoint, we look at water, we look at food safety risk during, every one of these steps, because we don't want to increase shelf life, but yet at the same time, increase our food safety risk and making someone sick. So, we try very hard to not have any produce come into contact with water. And so again, going back to that morning harvest and making sure that your produce is cool when you harvest it is one way to minimize having to do hydrocooling or have your product come into contact with water. The only time we really recommend that your product come into contact with water is in the case where you have like a sandy loam soil that it just rained, and here you have these beautiful greens, but they're really sandy and gritty. In that case, that could be a reason for a buyer to reject the product because of the quality, not necessarily the quality of the green itself, but the quality that they received it in, and they may have complaints from their customers if they're selling them a sandy green of some sort. So if you do have to wash any of your product, first, it's really important for you to seek advice from someone in your area, a food safety specialist or an extension agent. Make sure that you understand what does and does not infiltrate that water. Tomatoes, for example, if the water temperature of the tomato and the pulp temperature, the water temperature and the pulp temperature of the tomato has to be within 10 degrees of one another, or it will infiltrate within the tomato. So then whomever eats that tomato is then eating that wash water. We want to always make sure that the water is potable water. Yes, Lindsay.
Sorry to interrupt you, but as you're talking, Alison asked, what about washing product in preparation for farmers markets? Can you just talk about that a bit as you go?
Yes, let me finish the water and we'll go back to that. I think we'll be covering that later, Allison. So, anyway, as we are thinking about washing vegetables, and then we want to make sure that the water that we are washing the vegetables in is potable water or of drinking water quality. So you want to make sure you're using either municipal water or you've tested your water to ensure that it is not contaminated with total coliform or E. coli. You can add a disinfectant or a sanitizer to the water, but excuse me, make sure that you understand that vegetables cannot be sanitized. The purpose of adding a sanitizer to the water is just to ensure as you wash the vegetables and that water becomes, loses its turbidity and becomes dirty because of the dirt and debris coming off the vegetables, that contaminates or cross-contaminates the water itself. So the utilization of a sanitizer within the water ensures that you are maintaining the potability of the water at all times. But you also have to monitor this and make sure that it is the proper concentration. So some types of sanitizers are chlorine. Just remember that if you are growing with organic practices, even if you're not organic certified, there are some limitations through the National Organic Program in utilizing chlorine for washing. There's ozone, hydrogen peroxide, and peracetic acid. We don't recommend utilizing hydrogen peroxide on its own, but in combination with a product that has both hydrogen peroxide and peracetic acid, that stabilizes the sanitizer, making it more available in your wash water. So as we're thinking about chilling these vegetables, a lot of folks' first thought is, well, let's just stick it in here, try to pull the field heat out, and maybe it's even a freezer or, a temperature that the product cannot tolerate. So a lot of the products that are very highly sensitive to chilling injury are products like basil, cucumbers, eggplants, pumpkins, summer squash, and sweet potatoes. And then you have other products that are only moderately sensitive, such as snap beans, peppers, winter squash, tomatoes, and watermelon. I wanted to share with you because we wanted to, during these classes, be able to have a portable cooler to take with us to teach these classes. Here are two examples of two portable coolers that were made. The one on the right was made by NC State, called the Pack and Cool. On the NC State website are the construction cost and the actual instructions on how to make a Pack and Cool trailer. And then the one on the left is one that a grower created or made himself. And I will say that, see how they put the air conditioner on the front of the trailer? Just that shape of that trailer, this trailer was more effective in cooling and pulling field heat out. The one thing that I do want to make sure that though, if you put, say, for example, a whole pallet or even 25, 30 cases of summer squash into one of these, you harvest it late afternoon, full of field heat, all that's going to do is very quickly raise the temperature up within these trailers. So not optimal to put anything in that is not already pre-cooled. So it may be a good fit for your operation and may not. There is a technology that I want to mention called the CoolBot technology. We have installed those in a lot of just those storage buildings that you can buy, the pre-built storage buildings. And it utilizes an air conditioner. Certain brands, it's not compatible with all, so make sure you check that. But runs right now, I think around $360, $70. So very reasonably priced. But we did find that we had to replace the CoolBot technology about every 3 to 4 years. So another way to increase the shelf life, I mentioned it previously, but the relative humidity. Again, this optimal relative humidity for some of the products are in that product specification manual in your resources. And the relative humidity, just to define it, is the recommended percent of moisture in the air during storage. In order to raise the humidity, like during the winter when we have our heat on, our house dries out, we have a humidifier, maybe, that that we run in our house to make the air more moist. You also could, in our house, we may boil a pot of water, for example, and that makes a huge difference. So if you have a small space, then let's say you don't want to increase the humidity on every single vegetable because it's not optimal for it, and you just want to increase the humidity in a small section of your cooler space, you can place a wet burlap sack on or around your product, and that will help bring just that area's humidity up. If you have too much humidity in an area and you see degradation on your products as a result, then you will want to decrease the humidity, and you can do this by just simply circulating the air with some fans. So remember, optimal temperature plus optimal humidity equals extended shelf life.
Trish,
Yes.
Carrie asks, how do you control your relative humidity inside the CoolBot walk-in coolers?
It's the same concept, yes. And if we need to increase the humidity, we may just clean the cooler, like spray the floor, and do our cleaning sanitation process. And sometimes that pulls the humidity up just by having water in the cooler. But it's basically the same concept. Now, one thing with the CoolBot that I do want to note is because it's like a window air conditioner unit, with that CoolBot attached, you're just making that window air conditioner unit think it's this big machine, big cooling machine. So, but you have those fans that just blow straight out on those window air conditioner units. So you can cause chill damage to some of the products if you're blowing that air straight out. So before you cut a big hole into your storage building or whatever it is that you're installing that CoolBot and air conditioner into, think about which way the air is going to blow. Think about the products that you're going to be growing, because you may have leafy greens over here and I don't know, carrots or tomatoes over here. And so you don't need this side to be as cool as you do for the leafy greens. So you may want to push more of that air that way. To decrease the humidity, again, is just air movement and a fan. All right, so when we have one storage area, we don't often think, even in our refrigerators, that we may be decreasing the shelf life of a product, storing everything in one vegetable drawer within our refrigerator. It's the same concept in a walk-in cooler, a portable cold trailer, or the CoolBot unit. So we have ethylene producers. So as soon as that product is harvested, it'd be like us cutting our oxygen off. So as soon as the product's harvested, it's no longer alive, right? So it starts that degradation process. And so if we look at high ethylene producing vegetables like apples, cantaloupes, honeydew, tomatoes, if they're producing a lot of ethylene, if you are storing them in the same area as ethylene sensitive products, such as snap beans, lettuce, potatoes, broccoli, peas, and cucumbers is big, the ethylene sensitive products shelf life will decrease. So think about that, especially You know, like apples, you may think, well, I can store apples for a while, but is it worth the degradation of the other product in the cooler to have that those apples in storage with that product? So just really make sure that you think that through well before you do it. I mentioned earlier the physical damage of product. Always make sure that you yourself or your staff are handling the product with care to prevent any physical damage of the product. We often see like RPCs or recyclable plastic containers used in the field. And when products are harvested, and let's just take squash, products are harvested and it's thrown into this dry container, scraping the edge, that squash can look magnificent up until it gets to your customer, honestly. So once it starts, the degradation process looks beautiful when you harvest it. If you harvest it before your farmer's market, may look beautiful all through farmer's market, but then the customer gets it home and it starts the degradation process, you know, really quickly with the browning and the scarring on the side. So just always make sure that you're training your employees or you're handling your produce in a manner that, I mean, just I always tell the farmers, treat it with love, you know, handle it the way you would anything, you know, sensitive. So train the employees on how to handle certain commodities. For squash, for example, if you have a 5-gallon bucket that you're harvesting into, we often will add water to that bucket so that when that squash is thrown into that bucket, you know, that water kind of breaks its fall. And so, you know, there are solutions to a lot of this, but I mean, even like long fingernails, it can very quickly degrade product. You know, I've seen products sitting in the grocery store, fingernail marks all over it. A lot of folks don't even connect those marks to a fingernail, but that's what it is. So again, just handle all the fruits and vegetables with love. Packing, I mentioned the pack sizes and how important it is. You know, when you're starting to buy, like enter wholesale markets and you're starting to look at all these different boxes, it's overwhelming because like here you see a berry box, there's a cabbage box, there's a broccoli box, there's a box for everything. And you can very quickly have a high investment in these boxes. So you can see these corners of this berry box. I mean, these are made to stack in very high stacks on a pallet in a truck, and it be able to tolerate the transport time. The clamshells inside, you know, very specifically designed for these boxes. So it's really important because you're not going to see the end user, you know, what the end user or the buyer is going to see. You're seeing what your product looked like when you packed it. Again, avoid contamination. Poor employee hygiene can result in bacteria growth, improperly cleaning of harvesting tools and those RPCs. If you are not cleaning with soap and then sanitizing, you likely are not cleaning your containers well. That bacteria off of those dirty containers then can cross-contaminate onto the vegetables and start that degradation process. The reuse of cardboard boxes. I mean, I see this a lot, especially with market farms. You know, you have a cardboard box and you're carrying product to the farmer's market in the box, you're bringing the box back and doing the same thing the next weekend and so If you are GAP certified or Good Agricultural Practices certified, this is part of food safety, and you are not allowed to reuse those cardboard boxes. So I mentioned to you, I'm going to share a story with you all really quick. I mentioned to you all that that I worked with a wholesaler, and that was Foster Cabinets. And I had these delicious strawberries. And I see that, Sonia, that it's about time for a break, so I keep that in mind. But I had these delicious strawberries, but they're local. And all I had heard is local strawberries have no shelf life. Local strawberries do not sell. And I said, okay, well, I guarantee you I can sell these strawberries. And so the owner, the president of the company of Foster Cabinet said, all right, Trish, do me a favor though. Put some strawberries on your desk. Go home, sleep well, come back in the morning, and let's see what they look like. This is the photo of what they look like the next morning. And, one, they had not been properly cooled. They were a cultivar. They were a local strawberry, not a cultivar that was developed for a long shelf life. Those are those berries that have no flavor. The flavor is delicious, but there's no way you were going to get the 5-day shelf life that this buyer was looking for. You will notice that there's gray mold on this. This is caused by a fungus, Botrytis cinerea, and it causes it's called botrytis rot. Very common on strawberries. The interesting thing is that it grows right where the fingers actually touch the product to harvest. And so, this is the biggest cause of strawberry loss. To avoid the botrytis, he purposely had me put them in room temperature and an ambient temperature room on my desk to show me this. But you have to store the strawberries at 32 degrees Fahrenheit within 1 hour of harvest in order to minimize the growth of the gray mold. And this particular fungus continues to grow even at 32 degrees, but it slows down the growth process. Doesn't do away with it completely, but does slow it down. Here is an example of that, the guidance specification manual for strawberries. Again, it's a little blurry. I apologize for that. But you will see that like here, washing is never recommended for strawberries. Obviously, strawberries are 99% water, so you don't want to add more water to them or they start the degradation process. So I think, let's see here. I think I'll just push through 3 slides and then we'll take a break real quick. So if we're looking at respiration, we said that, vegetables breathe just like we do. This respiration process is something that, we can't stop unless we get the vegetable into the ultimate temperature at the optimal humidity level. And so, if we look at respiration and shelf life, they are inversely related. The higher the respiration rate of a product, the shorter the shelf life of a commodity. And I'll show you some high respiration versus low respiration products in a moment. Strawberries is one example of a short shelf life product. So it has a very high respiration rate. Respiration is the process of the vegetables taking in oxygen and breathing out carbon dioxide. They release heat from the respiration, and at this time is when they release their water. So the reduction of the water in the vegetables is what results in like that shriveled cucumber that's in your refrigerator. That's what's happening, is that respiration process. So if you look here at this chart, if a strawberry, for example, is stored at 32 degrees, then you will see a respiration of 6 to 10 kilograms per hour. At 50 degrees, it goes up to 25 to 50, and then at 68 degrees, it goes to 50 to 100, which is basically a 0 shelf life. Here are some high respiration versus low respiration crops. Green onions, snap peas, asparagus, broccoli, peas, and corn are high respiration crops, so they have a shorter shelf life. And you will see that the low respiration goes to those high ethylene producers, right? Which is apples, grapes, garlic, onions, potatoes, and sweet potatoes. The low respiration crops are the ones that are good for long-term storage. Here's an example of just that example charted for cooling and deterioration of strawberries. This is from a study that UC Davis did back in 1996. So if we have to delay the hours that the product will be in a refrigerated space, then at the hours cooling delay at 0, we have the product is 90% marketable. If you have a 2-hour delay, drops to 80%, 6-hour delay drops to 50, and you will see an 8-hour delay, it drops to 30%. So you can see how important this is. Here is just a beautiful photo of a bunch of different vegetables. And, you could see that even on your table at the farmer's market, you have all these vegetables, grouped together. They are being exposed to this ethylene gas. They are going through that respiration process. And so, I'm sure that many of you all who already do handle vegetables, you've seen this degradation process just happen before your eyes. All right, so with that, I think that we will go ahead and take a 5-minute break or just a few minute break, maybe come back at 5:15, Lindsay?
Yeah, just, yes, 5:15 is good. We've got 3 questions that I think maybe you could answer when we get back from break. And that way we're answering the questions as we go, as opposed to 15 minutes at the end. So you've got a bit more time.
Sure, absolutely.
Okay, everyone. So we'll be back at 5:15.
Lindsay, would you like to start with the first question? You're on mute.
Thank you. Alison had asked a question about lining boxes with plastic bags, and I answered that in the chat.
Yeah, so were we talking about lining boxes that had been used previously? Okay. Okay, just be cautious that sometimes those plastic bags do degrade or deteriorate the product quicker because it locks in that ethylene gas. So I would just be conscious of that, and it's not appropriate for every product.
And actually, Liz asked, is there any easy way to remove the ethylene?
Is there any way to what?
Remove the ethylene?
No, it's just the process.
Okay. Crystal asks, does wearing gloves help decrease the fungi on the strawberries?
Oh, the glove question.
Yeah, thanks for that, Crystal. That's a great question.
Yeah, Absolutely, it's a great question. So it could if the gloves are clean, but gloves can often carry bacteria and things, just from us touching things that our bare hands would carry. Oftentimes I tell I tell folks that I'm more apt to touch more things with gloves on my hands when they're protected than when I don't have gloves on. But touching the strawberries, your hands are a food contact surface with or without gloves. So just making sure that those food contact surfaces are clean would minimize it. But the one thing that, it's that 32-degree temperature for the strawberries that really stops that, slows down that process.
I guess, I think Trish and I are both proponents of having clean hands rather than wearing gloves, unless you absolutely have to wear the gloves. I don't know whether the sweatiness of your hands might have an impact on the strawberries.
Well, the other thing too, and like fruits that are so sensitive, such as strawberries, gloves sometimes bruise them just because of, kind of grips to the fruit. And so, sometimes gloves causes more damage, like blueberries, for example. You really don't want to wear gloves when you're harvesting blueberries. So, so it's very commodity specific.
I'm getting back to the ethylene. Carrie says when she worked at UC Davis, they piped in nitrogen into the strawberry containers to combat the ethylene while they shipped. This is not something the small farm can do.
Yeah, that's a very technical process. You actually have to have licenses to do that as well. And so it's definitely not something that a small farmer would want to think about doing.
And also, Alison says separating the high ethylene producers from the rest of your crops, if it's possible to do that, of course.
Right, having those different storage temperatures, storage facilities, refrigerator storage at the different temperatures with the optimal humidities in those, that would be 3 different storage facilities to cover the range of fruits and vegetables. So it'd be very expensive, but yes, that is the optimal way of doing it.
Definitely something that food hubs are all moving towards as soon as they can afford it.
Right.
And Alison says, yeah, tomatoes, sweet potatoes, there are certain things that just shouldn't be in such cold temperatures. Alison, you asking if I think if the plastic bags were vented, because you were saying, Tricia, that things could build up the ethylene.
Yeah, so they do make the plastic liners that are specific for vegetables, and they have little microscopic holes that you can't see with the human eye, that are there, and they are vented. Some folks are just using regular trash bags. Those obviously are not vented, and sometimes not food grade either. So be careful with that. But the vented plastic liners would be my recommendation.
A lot of CSAs, people quite often just use a t-shirt bag for a CSA. But then, that it's a different customer.
Right.
So, and then Carrie asks, no, it wasn't Carrie. Who was it? Going back. Yes, it was Carrie. She's using paper pulp pint boxes for her strawberries, and they seem to be absorbing the moisture so that they dry out immediately. Any ideas on how to combat that problem?
That's interesting, Carrie, because I've never seen that. What we see more often than that is, just the strawberry degrading and turning into liquid, and that paper pulp then, collecting that waste. I've never really seen a strawberry dry out. So I would say that, covering those strawberries with a wet towel, a clean wet towel, would help to keep the moisture in the strawberries or increase in the relative humidity within that storage area.
And I guess you're not putting the wet towel on the paper pulp container. You need to have it inside a box that can handle a wet towel.
Right. But yeah. And I wouldn't have it directly contacting the strawberry either, because that pressure on the strawberry would cause that botrytis.
Okay, those were our questions. If you want to carry on.
Okay, great. All right, so we're going to cover just a little bit of grading, sorting, and packing. What we see or what is referenced in the industry is USDA grade number 1. This does bring a higher value to your crops and are typically the prime vendor contract requirements. These grades are determined by the USDA. They do have resources that are available. I think they have one book that's about $700 that has all the commodities included in it. Again, maybe reach out, send us an email if you're looking for grades, USDA number 1 grades for just a couple of products, so you don't have to make that investment. We're glad to help. Here, yellow squash, comes in all different varieties. So this is just an example of what we pulled out of one of these books for US number 1 grade for size and appearance. A number 1 yellow summer squash or green summer squash would be 5 to 7 inches in length. This does include the crook neck, the patty pan, little round squashes. Those should be 3 to 4 inches in diameter, well formed, free of damage. This includes the cuts, bruises, and scars that don't show up until later that you may or may not see while you have possession of the product. And decay and firm with stems or portions of the stems attached. So you do have to have some of that stem attached for it to meet grade number 1 standards. The squash should be fairly young and tender. Dark green type should be entirely green. A dull surface and loss of firmness is due to water loss. And then I really want to point out here the tolerance. Every vegetable does have some tolerance, meaning in this case, you can have a 10% total damage, 5% for serious damage, and 1% for decay or breakdown is how the USDA has worded it. But you do have some room there. Doesn't have to be 100% perfect squash every time, for example. One way to, this is an inspector in the MDI warehouse, USDA inspector, that was grading some squash when I went through one day. You'll see that he has his grading knife in his hand, but you can see where that degradation starts in this green squash or zucchini. It starts at the tip, at the stem. The shorter that stem, the quicker that degradation really hits the actual product itself. So this is one reason that stem does increase the shelf life. So if we were to look at this, obviously this would fall outside of the grade number 1 standard. And so it would not be acceptable as a grade number 1. So the answer to this question would be no. For the summer squash, how many of you all think that this falls into grade? Let's see here. Somewhere I had. So if we go back and look at the tolerance is 10%, 5% for serious damage, 1% for decay or breakdown. Decay and breakdown includes just cuts, bruises, and scars. So I see Kimberly says no, Carrie says no, Crystal says no. So I think we'll go with the answer no. And that is correct. This is probably about 12 hours after harvest of a product that were beautiful squash. By the time they reached the buyer, this is what they looked like. In this case, the farmer argued with the buyer about the squash and said they were beautiful. So I would say, as you're entering the wholesale markets, they've been in the industry a long time. Very often, they're right. And we just don't have it in our hands long enough as farmers to see this degradation. Here is a better example that, this product, you can see some decay and scarring on it, but it would meet the quality #1 grade. I'm going to skip through strawberries because I've pretty much already covered that. Obviously, the botrytis and this damage on the strawberries, they would not be within grade #1. If we look at guidance for lettuce, you can see here must be 4 to 6 inches in length, free of damage, firm and straight, free from tip burn, downy mildew, freezing and discoloration. The russet spotting is not allowed, and they must be free from decay. And here again, we have the wholesale retail pack sizes. Whoops. So if we look at this, we see some of the rusting here in this photo. Do you all think that this falls within USDA grade #1? Yes or no? Remember, all it said was free from, and it didn't give a tolerance. Exactly. So the answer is no, because there's no decay or rusting allowed on the lettuce. Here is a beautiful head of lettuce with just a very little bit of the rust on it. And I would say that this would fall into grade #1 standards. Here is sweet corn. This guy was moving so quickly I couldn't get a good picture, but this is how they're grading the corn, ripping off the suck of the corn, and looking for it to be well trimmed, well developed for the variety. The husk should be fresh and green. The kernels all should be well formed, plump and milky, with the stalks trimmed, free from damage or decay. The cob must be at least 5 inches in length, and the stalk must be less than 6 inches. So you can actually have the stalk on the cob, but it has to be less than 6 inches. Of course, most markets prefer the shorter stalk. The tolerance is 10%, 2% for decay. So moving on, does the sweet corn fall into US grade #1 standards? We can see it's, started to dry up some. And so Lauren says no. Lauren, that is correct. Ruth says no. That's correct. And Crystal, no. So let's move on here.
Trish,
We have,
Trish, back to the lettuce. Carrie and Kimberly are wondering if you just peel off the outside leaf, if you trimmed or removed it. I think the point is, this is what the buyer's going to see. It's out of your hands by the time they see it. So you have to make.
And if you trim it, it would be fine for the farmer's market, but likely that rust, it would show back up, within hours, probably, on those inside layers of the lettuce. It's worth a try, but the buyer could reject the product. It's best to do a test on your own to really learn the vegetables before you risk something like that working with a wholesaler, so you don't ruin that relationship. So here we have the stalk, and what did we say? I think the stalk maximum could only be up to 6 inches. And so does this meet US grade #1? Kimberly says no, and that is correct. So it exceeds the 6 inches. And there's our break. So, but you can see that these kernels look really healthy. This is probably otherwise a good piece of corn. We just need to trim that stalk down a little bit. So let me skip through here. Pack sizes. As I mentioned before, the wholesalers and you do not want to handle any of your product any more than necessary, because the more we handle it, the quicker the degradation process starts. So let's just go through some of these pack sizes. Again, with strawberries, here we have, 3 different ways that this is packed. Obviously, the one on the right is the industry standard 8 1-pound clamshells in this corrugated reinforced corner flat. The 2 on the left would be more suitable for a farmer's market, but not the wholesale industry. And remember, they want to pack as much product on those pallets as possible. Let's see, I'm going to skip through the summer squash. If we look at tomatoes, most tomato boxes have these vent holes. They're there for a reason. They also have lids, and the size, and I see there's a typo there, but the size is typically printed on the side of the box. So you can see that this is box number 27 and it's 5 by 6. So one way without a tomato sizer or some fancy machine that costs a lot of money to size tomatoes. When we say 5 by 6, this is what we mean by that. And it's 5 down, 6 across. You can see that each one of these tomatoes are very similar in size as well as color. To protect them from bruising, this is a single layer box. And so these are single layer because they're on the riper side. They're more at the light red stage. Getting very close to the red stage of a tomato, which we'll talk about in a moment. But when they're this ripe, you cannot stack tomatoes on top of one another. Obviously, they get soft and start bruising. You will also see that this grower has some bubble wrap underneath it to further protect it during transport. Here are the different tomato ripening stages. Green is stage number 1 for those that like fried green tomatoes. We have breakers, stage 2, turning, stage 3, and pink. You'll see that it has a little bit of yellow, but the majority of the inside or the pulp of the tomato is pink. Light red, which is stage number 5, and this is often how we see tomatoes in the grocery store because they're still firm. They have a longer shelf life. They're protected from bruising. And then red is stage 6, which would be a true vine ripe tomato. So here's an example of one of the fancy machines that sizes the tomatoes. You can see each one of them goes down, the appropriate row, I guess. But on the top, they have these cameras, and this also sorts the product by color as well as size. So that consistency and the color is what the wholesalers are looking for. This is a piece of equipment that USDA sells, and it is used, it's a tomato sizer. And so this is a much more reasonably priced way to size your tomatoes. Except for we will warn you that it takes a long time to get these from the USDA if you order them. And Lindsay, are we going to provide them with a link of that website as well?
I actually put the catalog in the folder.
Fantastic.
Yes, the catalog.
Okay, great. All right. So really quickly, we're not going to go into this in too much detail. We've only got about 25 minutes left, but I do want to mention, thank you, Sonia. I do want to mention that, some of the language that we often hear as we're talking to buyers, and especially to wholesale buyers of retail product that's going to be in grocery stores, for example, is the PLU or product lookup and the UPC code, which is the universal product code. These two systems are very widely used among the retailers to basically efficiently ring up produce. So it provides a barcode basically, or a number that is industry standard For example, let me just move to the next slide. So this is an example of an organic sweet potatoes PLU. So that 94816 is used throughout the entire United States at least, and into some foreign countries. It's a 4 or 5 digit number. So if you go to self-checkout, this is a number that you're entering into the system and weigh in your product potentially, if it's not sold by the each and it's sold by the pound. Over here is an example of an organic cilantro bunch, and the PLU or this particular barcode actually includes the PLU as well as the universal product code. The universal product code, let's see here. So the PLU code is based on the commodity, the variety, and the size. They are specific to either conventional and organic product as well. For example, in this is Dewdrop Farm, located in Mocksville, North Carolina. And this is a slicing tomato, and that product code is 4799. If you grow a slicing tomato in Philadelphia, and it's a size 5x6, and it's grown in a greenhouse, this is the code 4799. If it's grown in a field, slicer in a field, it's PLU 4064. So if you get into this industry, you'll quickly learn the PLU codes for the products that you sell. All right, so remember that the retailers do use the PLUs basically to reduce confusion between items that are charged by the each or charged by the pound. The PLU coded in the register then prompts the cashier for the quantity or weight. And so it's much more efficient and ensures that the correct price is being charged for the product.
So Trish, PLU is something that goes with the particular product. It's not a unique identifier per farm. It's that particular commodity.
Yeah, it's for that particular product. So like we said, the tomatoes, there's one for greenhouse slicer. There's one for field slicer. So those are very consistent throughout the industry within those retail settings.
Whereas
the UPC code is a unique code that you can create that barcode based on a numbering system for inventory, like to maintain inventory.
they carry
And for your traceability programs.
Does that answer your question, Carrie?
I think so, except I don't know how to create my own UPC number.
I'm going to take a look at the fact sheet I put in the resource folder and see if it's going to help you with that.
It does.
Okay,
It does help.
thanks.
Yeah, but hang tight, Carrie, because it just gets more fun. Hang tight. Okay. So do you need a PLU on your produce? If you're selling to a larger wholesaler who is that their primary customer is to retail markets, it's very likely that they will require you to put a PLU sticker on each one of those watermelons or each one of those tomatoes before you pack it into a box. And again, it's basically for the items, apples, for example, that are sold by the each. It also can be used for the by the pound, but we see buyers really particular about products that are sold by the each. So some easily identified varieties, such as yellow squash, cucumbers. A cucumber is a cucumber. It's a slicing cucumber. We know the difference between a pickling cucumber and a cucumber. So you may not see a PLU sticker on those because most everyone recognizes that product. So they may not may not require you to have it. So as we're talking about, PLUs, if a retailer or a wholesale buyer is talking to one farm that's willing to put a PLU on a greenhouse cucumber, and one farm is not willing to put a PLU on a greenhouse cucumber, then that buyer is going to go with that farm that's willing to put that PLU on it. So keep that in mind. So it is a marketing opportunity. So here is a case study from here in North Carolina again. And this is Bogue Sound watermelons, really delicious watermelons. And so they created this label. They've had the label, but they went in and added their PLU to it, the 4032 here on the right. And their sales increased significantly just from doing that. And it was because of the convenience. It was ready to sell when it was received. All right, so here are, and this is in that guide that you were referring to, that fact sheet, Lindsay. Here are places that you can look up your PLU codes for your particular product. You can have PLU text custom printed, just like Vogue watermelons. And the approximate cost, and this is several years ago, I'm sure it's higher now because everything is, but it was $9 for a roll of 2,500. And then here are some of the folks that we've gotten really quality labels at a very reasonable price.
Not sure if the link, not sure if the links are in there, Trish. So maybe we could put those in the chat.
I thought they were on the page 2 of that. But yeah, we can.
I can get them off the slides.
I don't know how to do it at this moment, so
I can get them off the slides.
okay.
I think
Thank you.
It's just not. It's an older PDF, so they're not links, but they're you can cut and paste.
All right. So the UPC code, the Universal Product Code, is typically a 12-digit international standard barcode, which has many uses for retailers. It enables them to maintain their inventory, to identify products, to scan the items efficiently at their registers, to easily track sales and make sure that there are no inventory confusions by misidentifying and identification of a product. And so if you connect this UPC, this product code, which again is typically the 12 digits, to your inventory system, then that again is a benefit and a marketing opportunity for the warehouse, and they don't have to necessarily recreate that system. However, if they have a traceability program in place, they likely will receive your UPC code that you put on your product, and it's usually at the pack size level, the case level. That becomes their one step back in traceability, is utilization of your UPC code. UPC, and I'm not going to mention Produce Traceability Initiative yet. The products that need a UPC code include, again, fixed weight or fixed count produce items. For example, include a 3-pound bag Gala apple or a 5-pound bag red potato. Each one of these would have a unique UPC. So again, the UPC is unique to your item and your company. It's a generic code for standard commodity type items. And you can use a generic company prefix along with an item number. Produce Marketing Association does help to assign UPC numbers, kind of as a preliminary to participating in the full-blown Produce Traceability Initiative, which we'll talk more about here in a moment. Where can you order UPCs? Again, we can include this in the resources, but I mentioned Produce Traceability Initiative. This is an initiative that is a, well, I think I have a slide on it, but it's called a GS1 system. And so I think we need to have a PTI webinar just on PTI eventually, because it's really hard to get through all of it. So anyway, you know, this again, I wouldn't do this if I were a small farmer unless I knew I had a dependable buyer and the buyer is requesting this before they would buy from me. It's probably a next step past a food safety program, implementation of a food safety program, and maybe even GAP certification. But it, you know, it gets complicated. So don't let it overwhelm you. It's not something that you have to do immediately as you're scaling up. So here is an idea of what this GS1 system and being part of it costs. Again, this is a national effort or a worldwide effort to have a system in place to ensure traceability of a product, and that number immediately links back to the farmer. If you order a UPC from a UPC reseller, you can request a UPC image as a JPEG file. You can add a barcode to your custom farm labels. Again, here are some resellers, UPC resellers. We can include that if it's not already in there in that resource. Again, here's another example of redesigning a label to include this UPC code, which this barcode you see on every produce item just about in the produce industry. But this is an item number as well as a farm identifier. But again, sales increased immediately. You know, their local product fit into those industry standard products very well. Here's another example of some heirloom black cherry tomatoes. This is the GS1 label with their unique identifier on it. So these are just some examples. Here are some companies that we have spoken to and do a great job with label design, if you'd like some assistance with that. And then here are some references where, if you want to learn more about PLUs and UPCs, there are a lot of resources out there. And you will see here that the Produce Traceability Initiative is one of those resources. Here's a video from Got to Be North Carolina. So good place to learn some additional information. So just to give you a little more information about the Produce Traceability Initiative, again, this is an industry effort, a national effort. It is a case level electronic traceability system within the produce industry only, does not go beyond the produce industry. And there are 7 milestones to the implementation of being part of this Produce Traceability Initiative. First, you have to obtain a company prefix. Then you assign 14-digit G10s to every case configuration. So if you have a half bushel, 20-pound box of squash, and you have a 1 1/9 bushel, 40-pound box of squash, that's 2 G10 numbers that you are needing. It gets very expensive. I think for one of my clients, I just bought, oh goodness. Well, first I bought 100 G10s for a small client that grew very rapidly, and to join PTI and to get those 100 G10s. Don't quote me on this, but I think it was like $1,600. And so, you know, it can get very expensive, up to $10,000, depending on the size of your farm. So don't rush into it, but know that it's there, and so that you can have that conversation with your buyers. So just a quick recap, the key points of today's webinar: the produce begins to deteriorate the second that it's harvested. Make sure that you are harvesting when it is cool outside, so that field heat does not get locked into it, to increase that shelf life. Maintain a cold chain logistics to ensure that the product is kept in optimal storage conditions, so that you do have that optimal shelf life that your buyers are looking for. And honestly, that shelf life and how the product visually looks from a quality standpoint is what will give you that commercial potential that you have to scale up your operation. Once the fruits and vegetables are harvested, they're still living and therefore generating these chemical reactions that consume the oxygen and release the CO2 and water. So treat them like they're living, love them, handle them with care. Remember that each product is unique, which alters many of the attributes affecting the commercial value, such as color, flavor, and texture. And, you know, I mean, this goes without saying, as you're looking at your whole plan and you're trying to scale up your farm and you have very little infrastructure, and it doesn't make sense to make that investment until you know you have a buyer for your product. You know, maybe do a little research, see what can be stored together, and you can maintain that optimal shelf life for the product. So incorporate that into your farm plan as you scale your farm up. Always keep the U.S. grade #1 standards in mind when you're packing the produce. You'll eliminate having product returned by a buyer. Always communicate with your buyer to confirm that their product specifications at the beginning of the season. You don't want to send your first shipment to a buyer and then they come back and say, oh, we wanted fancy squash. None of it should exceed 6 inches. Or, oh, we wanted a medium squash. So make sure that you have that conversation with your buyer as you're planting, so you can plan what those anticipated harvest dates are and what your anticipated yields are, which obviously the yields are dependent on the size of the product, the size the product is at time of harvest. Buyers can change their specifications sporadically to meet the current consumer demand. I know we saw this change with that institutional size medium squash or large squash, yellow squash and zucchini. We saw this change to that fancy squash pretty much overnight. And, you know, once a squash gets to medium, obviously you can't shrink it. So just, you know, keep that in mind. But it's basically what the industry demand is, or the consumer demand is rather. Always utilize buyer labeling and pack size requirements as a marketing tool. As you gain knowledge, make sure you share with your buyer that you have taken the time to gain that knowledge. So again, communicate with the buyer, make sure they know well in advance, probably 6-8 weeks in advance, what's coming out of the field. Lack of communication, thank you, Sonia. Lack of communication is one key is what we always see as the result of failure within the wholesale industry. So communicate. Remember, premium product equals premium price. And most importantly, if you do start working with a wholesaler and they do reject a shipment, I will tell you that it is very common for wholesalers to just place a small order with a local farm that they're working with to scale up their volume. They want to see the quality. They want, this is the beginning of developing that relationship. And so they not only want to see the quality, they're testing your shelf life, making sure that they can extend the appropriate shelf life to their customer as well. So if you have a shipment that's rejected, I mean, it will happen. Learn from this. Make sure that you understand why the shipment wasn't rejected. Make sure you don't make the same mistakes twice. Always focusing on correcting the problem. Continue communicating with the buyer and assure him or her that you have corrected the problem. And then don't let the buyers give up on you all if this is something that you really want and you want to put all of your land into production. Be persistent. Maybe it's not the right buyer, but don't give up. Just keep trying. All right. Quick, I think we pretty much answered questions through the process.
Yeah, are there any final questions? And then as people are thinking about that, Aaliyah, do you want to, Trish, thank you so much.
Oh, you're welcome.
Thank you so much.
I know we had a lot of information to cover in a little bit of time, but we did it.
We did, and we will be sharing the recording of this and a PDF of the presentation as well.
You're welcome.
What's that?
I said, you're welcome, Lauren. Sorry.
Yeah, Lauren, you can learn a lot from Trish. And I put the links to the resource folders that I put together in the chat, but we'll also be sharing those links again in the email. And we do have all that information linked on our website. Yeah, Aaliyah, go.
Yeah, I'm just adding the links to our next 2 workshops into the chat. So June 7th, as you know, the next follow-up for this will be at Deep Roots Farm in Southern Maryland. So hope y'all can make it. And then on June 27th, we're gonna have a wholesale buyers panel with folks from Sweet Green, Common Market, 4P Foods, and Whole Foods, right, Lindsay?
Wegmans.
And Wegmans to, to answer questions about wholesaling and their requirements. So all in all of these workshops together will really put you in a good place to wholesale and start thinking about, those requirements and how to get your operation up to standard. And if you still have questions, we're here too to answer those. So here's the link. I put the links for June 7th and June 27th in the chat, and we'll put this in a follow-up email as well so you don't lose it.
I was thinking, I'm sorry, Leah, I'm jumping on you. What?
No, just saying, you want to share the survey, or you want me to just put that in the chat now?
So please, Aaliyah's going to put the survey link in the chat. We are, of course, funded to give you this for free. And the only thing we ask is that you fill out the evaluation survey so that we can satisfy our masters at the USDA. Well, actually, they're mostly women. So the women at the USDA who need this information. Wonderful women who keep funding us. And we'll also send this link in the follow-up email as well. Please fill out there and let us know what we can be doing better, what you like. And if you have any suggestions for other webinars we could be doing or on-farm things we could be doing, we focus mostly on food safety, but food safety is part of the whole food quality quest for high food quality. So we do try to not just talk about food safety, which is why we put on this workshop today. And Trish, I was thinking maybe a follow-up webinar could be going into the different cooling methods, bringing down the field heat, and also looking at different packing lines and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. And then of course that is some of what we do highlight, and we'll be highlighting in Upper Marlboro next week.
Well, for those who can't make it, we'll be doing some.
But yeah, let's focus on trying to bring that online.
Yeah.
That'd be great.
Okay.
We'll get some ideas next week, and we can follow up with everyone.
Okay, thank you all so much. And Trish, thank you for all your hard work and expertise.
Well, you are welcome anytime. Thank you all, everyone.